That's another one.
Try watching the end of that. My favorite movie of all time. Try watching the end of that movie.
The last 18 minutes of color.
No, but the one with a shot all in candlelight.
Barry
Lyndon.
Yeah.
Very glacial pace.
totally.
But I loved it, fascinated by it, because it was so immersive, and you were in that kind of
2001 is one that I watched it when I was a kid on TV and was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And
Right,
then
yeah,
I
no.
mean, probably when I was in high school I saw it, and then got to college and they were showing it because Douglas Trumbull, the special effects guy, was coming to give a talk, and so they showed it again to say, hey, this thing, and watching it on the screen was a completely different experience.
Yeah.
So I could easily imagine that seeing it, in the cinematic kind of
It was,
environment
I
really changes
think
it.
it
I'm
was
watch it
probably
again then. I'm gonna watch it.
Watch it again.
Yeah. It's been a
Basically,
couple years,
anytime someone whose opinion I respect says reevaluate that thing, it's worth reevaluating.
Yeah. I think maybe my expectations were too high when I did see it the first time, because I
Also,
became
you
a
knew it
Cooper
was the
fan.
final.
Right.
yeah.
It would be the magnum
Like, it should be-
opus.
yeah.
What was his movie before that? It was
Full Metal
Jacket,
Jacket.
which was
Oh,
just,
which
off the
song
charts,
here.
really.
Yeah,
Off the charts,
Yeah.
I got to go, boys.
You did.
George,
So much fun. Congratulations on 10.
thank you so much. Thanks for coming
Good to
and
see you,
joining us.
brother.
You too, George. See you soon.
Where's the other guys? There he is. You going? Congrats.
Thank you, sir. I'll see you soon, man.
See you
And I
guys soon.
guess
Good luck.
I gotta go as well.
Drink
We got
fluids.
through 2 lines of this equation. So as I predicted,
Save it for the 20.
failed miserably.
Yeah.
I had a whole thing was going to explain Feynman diagram, but we'll do it some other time.
Thanks, Brian.
So thanks a lot, guys. It was a lot of
Thanks
fun.
for coming. Good seeing you.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy the 7 hours?
10 total.
left? Yeah.
We're 3 hours
6 hours,
in.
57 minutes. We
Wow.
have a counter on the board. 6 hours, 57 minutes left.
Cool. Have fun. Thanks so much for
Thanks a
having me.
lot.
All right, Brett.
All right. I was going to do a news item. Bob, you coming back on set? All right.
You want to take some listener questions?
Hey, Bob, take that away.
Go ahead, pull it up while I So, Bob,
People are watching this?
you wanted to talk about the new Tesla battery. Tesla is promoting a home battery.
Yeah.
That it could be, a game changer for the market. I'm guessing it's a little premature for that, but tell us what you think.
Well, yeah, this recently came out just a couple days ago. There was they had a press conference.
Quietly going up the stairs.
Thank you, George.
See you, George.
Quietly going up the stairs.
Did you hear something?
So, billionaire Tesla Motors CEO Elon Musk recently announced, and he has hinted at this for months now. People have been speculating about this. He's talking about the unveiling of the first battery designed for the home, which is only really a subset of what he's really talking about, but it's getting a lot of the press. It's called the Powerwall, and I loved his quote at the press conference. He said, "The issue with existing batteries is that they suck. They're really horrible. They're expensive. They're unreliable. They're sort of stinky, ugly, bad in every way." So if you look at the image of the Tesla Powerwall batteries, they're definitely not stinky and ugly. They're pretty cool looking. So what is this thing? What is he talking about? What is this image representing? So what you see here is the Powerwall, which is a big lithium-ion battery, which is pretty much derived from his Tesla cars, right? I mean, it's essentially very similar to that. These, what you're looking at here, each individual unit is about 4 feet by 3 feet, and it's very thin. I forget that last dimension. Is it like 12 inches? It really is not going to be sticking out from the wall too much.
Like a flat screen television.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not even as thick.
So the Powerwall comes in two types. You've got the 10 kilowatt hour battery and the 7 kilowatt hour battery. They're $3,500 and $3,000 US dollars. So they're fairly cheap for what you're getting here. And the claim is that they can be used to power most homes during peak evening hours. So that's pretty interesting. So the benefits that they are claiming now is there's three major benefits that they claim. One is load shifting, where you could actually charge during low rate periods and use them during the peak hours, which is interesting.
Save you money.
Yep. There's also the claim for solar power storage, which is kind of big because with photovoltaics really improving by leaps and bounds. People are putting it on their roofs.
By which you mean they're making slow incremental improvements every year.
Yes.
But adding up to.
Yes.
I think we are getting to, not to get off topic, but we are getting to a bit of a tipping point where solar panels are actually economic. They're cost effective, and so
I agree. And if you look at where we were 10 years ago compared to now, all those slow incremental changes have added up to something extraordinary even now, and just going to get even more so. And also, so for solar power storage, that's another big benefit. And then there's also backup power for outages. So that's the other big thing that they're touting for this Powerwall.
Yeah.
So I tried to come up with a bottom line. All right, what's the bottom line of the Powerwall? How good is it really? What are we talking about? And I've got some interesting information from Dan Steingart, who is an assistant professor in mechanical and aerospace engineering at Princeton University. He seems like a guy that I would trust, generally speaking, about this thing. As he describes, he lives battery technology like this. So his assessment was that this would be great for an uninterruptible power supply, but it's not quite there yet for your everyday electricity usage. And so if you want some hard numbers, he says that on a per kilowatt basis installed, the cost of energy is roughly 4 to 8 times a standard generator. So you could go out and buy a standard generator for much less than what these guys are costing now. And of course, depending on hours of usage. He says, in rough numbers, at this cost, you either need a 10 times the cycle life to compete with a generator setup at full utilization. So these are 10-year batteries. So he's saying that you would need an order of magnitude more than that to make this equivalent to a standard generator. And he says that in order to compete with utility pricing of electricity, you would need 10 times the cycle life at 1/3 the cost. So to compare with
there yet.
But is that because they're not being mass produced? Is that a huge factor in this?
Well, yeah, sure. When it's mass produced, the price will go down, but not by what we need to make it equivalent. Not yet. It could take a while. And remember, his figures here do not include installation cost and the cost of an inverter. I mean, inverters can be very, very expensive. So he's not even counting those things. So he's saying if you know somebody who knows how to install it and save you some money, that would be great.
What kind of life do you get out of these things?
These are
years?
10 years. They're saying
well, they're
this
saying
is a 10
years, but I mean, obviously they haven't been in use for 10 years, so we don't
Right.
know. The other thing is with batteries like this, and it's anyone who uses an iPad or whatever, the battery life might be great when you first get them.
It'll
or like
diminish.
your phone, like Bobby complained a lot about. But the battery life, it does not like you get 10 years out of it, and then they stop
at
working.
100%
They are
rate,
diminishing in capacity the whole time.
I've had my iPhone 6 Plus for maybe since November, and I'm seeing a battery hit now.
Although it's hard to
it's
say, though, because with phones, the more you load apps on there, the apps drain a lot of the battery use. So there's a lot of other variables in the battery itself. But even still,
that's true. But
we know that the
pattern.
batteries
That's
lose
the pattern.
capacity.
Right.
Their capacity tends to
Wanes.
over time. Absolutely. So the as your backup solution, it's not cost effective. Get a generator, right? I mean, that's much more cost effective at this point in time. Although it would serve that function if you had one. I think the main reason to get it is to store renewable energy like wind or solar that you're getting during when it's available.
Daytime, bright out.
Or windy or whatever, but not necessarily meeting peak use, right? So this is a way of buffering production to use. But of course, for now, you could just use the grid for that. You could just give the electricity to the grid and take it off the grid when you need it. So you don't really need this until we get to the point where we're producing so much electricity that the grid can't take it.
That's a really good point. I would talk to Joe, our brother Joe, about this. He has a lot to say about this, and he would totally agree with that. That right now the grid is essentially a big battery. So you don't really need this for the grid if there is no net metering, though. If there's net metering in your state, which is an important concept, where basically you sell the surplus energy that you create to the utility. If you don't have that, then this makes sense. It also makes sense for this if you're not on the grid. Obviously, if you're not on the grid, this will come in handy. And it also could be good as an uninterruptible power supply. But otherwise, right now, it doesn't make a lot of sense, depending on how the solar works in your state and things like that. But now, if we step back a bit and get an even bigger picture, this is actually the Powerwall is part of a new brand for Tesla. It's called Tesla Energy. And incorporated into this new brand of Tesla Energy, we also have things that are more optimized for business and utilities, not just the Powerwall. So the Powerwall, you could stack these. You could see right here in that image that there's three of these tied together. You could stack 9 of these together, and you would get 90 kilowatt hours from 9 of these stacked together. But if you take a step up, you get what's called a power pack. Now the power pack, that's meant for much bigger installations, for big businesses, for utilities. Yeah. And these, check this out, these are infinitely scalable. You can put these power packs together, these 100 kilowatt hour power packs, and scale them together. You can go to 500 kilowatts, you can go to 10 megawatts, or even at gigawatt levels. You could put enough of these together to power an entire city.
How about 1.21 gigawatts?
Right.
That's where it
imagine powering an entire city if you had a gigawatt level of these things.
That's what Fairbanks, Alaska does right now. They have the largest battery bank, I think, in the world, and in their winter times, they need to have that in order to survive.
This would be great for them.
This would be a
So here's two numbers. Here's 2 numbers he threw out. If you had 160 million of these power pack units, that would be enough for the United States. 2 billion could power the world, which would be 200 terawatts. So,
all right, but it's not just
interesting.
Like we said, though, it's not just the creation of the power packs. It's having the other hardware that you need to make it work.
Well, these integrate very seamlessly into pre-existing solar installations and the grid. They're designed to pretty much plug and play.
All right, so
that's a big point for these guys.
I think it would be really interesting. Like let's say you had an electric car. So you have a bank of not the professional ones that you were saying, but more the consumer version of those batteries in your house. They charge all day. Mm-hmm. Right, then you come home and you charge your car all night, however long the electricity transfer takes. You charge your car at night, and you're essentially at that point driving your car for free after you get past the cost of the batteries, right?
Well, I don't think so, because I think it would make more sense if you had solar on your roof, and you're producing solar, and then if you just feed off of that, you don't really need to go to the battery because you could sell that to the utility, and they will pay. You get paid for it. So if you send the power to the battery, there's inefficiencies in there, right? But from the grid, it's 1-to-1. Whatever you produce, you're going to get back. So it doesn't necessarily make sense for a lot of states that have solar to do that.
So you're saying have your solar array that's on the roof of your house immediately gets sold right back into the grid, which I heard, from my understanding, that's really hard to do. It's really hard to hook your solar array on the roof of your house back into the grid.
Well, isn't that
that's pretty much what they do.
I just think from what I've read, it's expensive and it's not like an easy thing to make that happen.
Maybe by yourself, but if you buy these packages where they will install it and hook it into the grid, and then basically whatever you produce would go to power would go into the grid, and then what you take from the grid is subtracted, right?
Gotcha.
From that's net metering. Not all states have that.
But don't you think though it's a better idea to just keep it inside your own home and just charge your car off of that at
If
night?
you're off the grid, for sure. If you're off the grid, it makes a lot of sense.
The problem is that these batteries don't last forever. Okay. So you have to include in any kind of calculation about the environmental impact, the efficiency, the cost effectiveness. How much does the battery cost? How long will it last? How will the capacity change over time? What do you do with it when it's spent?
Yeah,
So the environmental impact, that's big. What are we going to do with the
unless Tesla has a means of taking it back and reusing the parts and everything and building new
if they
batteries
recycle it, would be nice. But apparently, it's complicated. I mean, there's no big market for recycled lithium, so I don't know what that means. You could interpret that as, well, it's cheaper just to pull it out, to mine new lithium. But there's other toxic chemicals in there as well, and I think there's some rare earths, and they're actually hard to extract. We actually send our electronics to China to extract the rare earths because they don't have laws protecting the workers from all the harmful toxins. That's the problem. There's less rare earths in a piece of electronics, concentration-wise, than there is in the raw mineral. We're extracting it from. Right. So, in any way, environmentally, it's complicated. That's why, like, using all electric vehicles, unless you count the cost of producing the battery, disposing of the battery, all that stuff,
It may not be worth it.
yeah, you have to include that into calculation. So it seems to me, I mean, I think we're in the early adopter stage where this is not universally useful, but there may be some niches where it is useful, and that will drive the technology and get us maybe over the threshold where, it'll become just another appliance you have in your home, at some point,
Your home battery.
So this is just the very, very beginning.
I think so. But the other way to think about this is incorporating batteries into the grid. Yeah. Now, one way to incorporate them into the grid is for lots of homes to have them. I agree. Right? Because the homes then become the buffer. Another way is just for the utility companies to have the mega, arrays of batteries to buffer their own grid.
The battery stations.
Now, there's a couple of advantages for having this kind of a large amount of battery capacity in the grid. One is that it helps load balancing. So if the utility company has to balance how much electricity is going through wires at any point in time, and if they don't load balance properly, that's how you could have overload.
Yeah, brownouts or whatever.
Yeah. Another thing is you want to flatten out production. So in the morning and the early evening are the peak use of energy, of electricity. And then there's troughs when everyone's asleep and in the middle of the day. So you have to build your infrastructure to meet peak demand. And that peak demand, that peak capacity goes unused off peak.
Right.
Okay.
That's hugely inefficient.
That's a waste, yeah.
So imagine if we had enough batteries in the system that they were buffering the energy, that the production and demand could be flat. We could just produce how much energy people are using on average just 24/7, and when we're overproducing, it gets stored, and when we're underproducing, we pull it out.
Yeah.
So I think eventually we'll want a grid where we have that built in, but lithium-ion batteries may not be the answer, right? There's other ways to store energy that we're working on that people, and we may, especially if we start to go more and more over to renewable energies like wind and solar that aren't on demand. We want to. There's another point. This is kind of a subtle point where there's another advantage here is that when we have to go to that peak capacity, we go to more and more dirty forms of energy, right? So you're actually burning more coal at sometimes than in other times.
Yeah.
So right, does that make sense? So if we could lower our peak capacity because we don't need it because we have all the batteries. We could get rid of some of the dirtiest forms of energy, the most expensive or whatever. So there's that advantage as well. It wouldn't necessarily equally decrease every form of energy. We could preferentially get rid of the dirty coal.
But I see it as kind of a catch-22 though, because right now, in the future, with a battery like this in every home, that will be a great thing, like you said, to buffer the energy or the power. But in the short term, this probably doesn't make a lot of sense for integrating it with your solar in states that don't have the net metering. So, but there are other good ideas. So it's kind of a catch-22. It doesn't make sense to use it now in certain applications, but in the future it will once it's ubiquitous.
Right. The other thing is we talked about. When you're overproducing electricity, let's say you have solar panels, and when it's middle of the day, you're not using a lot, but you're producing a lot, you just sell it back to the grid. That's actually your battery is the grid.
Right.
That works until we get to the point where if every home had solar, we might produce more energy than the grid needs or can take.
Yeah.
So then you have to store it. So, but we're a long way away from that. But eventually, but now we're talking where are we going to be in 20 or 50 years?
Thorium reactors.
Are we going to have? Well, while we're producing the energy, we may local production and being able to buffer production and demand seems like the way to go. You don't want to, right? But in any case, I think we may end up where we do have large battery capacity of some sort, energy storage capacity in our energy infrastructure. It's not just all, because right now we're basically producing what we need right at the moment, and we're just producing more when we need more, and we're producing less when we need less. It's on demand, and we have all this redundancy built into the grid to handle the peak. We're not really buffering it. I think we'll incorporate some kind of energy buffer.
I wonder, is anybody using physical batteries? Meaning, you spin up a huge porcelain wheel that's in a vacuum, that's where you're storing the energy,
Right.
And then the reclaim technology that we use with brakes. I've talked about this on the show before. I remember hearing
regenerative braking.
Yeah, someone was saying like a hospital, as an example, would have a tube built way down underground, right? So that maybe they go down a couple of 100 feet below the hospital. They build these giant airtight tube, or zero air. And they put these huge porcelain discs and they slowly spin them up, and then they reclaim the energy if there's ever a power outage. And in a frictionless or very low friction environment, they would spin indefinitely, right? Why wouldn't we just start using that as
that technology is being developed.
Let's do it.
Using essentially a flywheel as an energy storage device. Another sort of physical kind of innovative way is imagine an underground chamber.
Like with salts,
that's naturally thick walled, whatever. So it could essentially it can be made airtight, and you pressurize it. You use energy to pressurize these caverns, and then you run turbines off that pressure when you need the energy back.
Right.
So that's a way.
Or what about that thing where they would melt type of substance and then reclaim the heat from the you basically pump all the heat into it and then
it's got a huge heat capacity that you could draw from. The other thing I like about this battery, of course, because I always go there in my mind, is the zombie angle. Because if the civilization ends and I've got solar on my
Are you saying
my
install
roof,
solar on top of zombies? What an awesome idea!
No, but solar on the roof and the battery storing the technology. I love the idea of if I need to go off the grid, it's nice to know that I can go off the grid if I have to, and that's why I love this type of technology.
Well, Bob,
I always think of that
conceptually.
I have a hiker's solar backpack. You take this thing, unfold it. I have this. It works, and it's great.
Yeah.
You attach it to the top of your backpack when you're hiking, and you can recharge your phone when you're out walking around.
That's the kind of stuff that people will be dying for, like if civilization collapses. I wish I had solar everything.
All right, let's change gears a little bit. Jay, I want to hit one of your news items.
Sure.
You're going to give us a bit of an update on the patent troll, the podcasting patent troll.
Yeah, we've talked about this on the show before, and I think part of it was we were a little worried because this company, this U.S. company in Texas called Personal Audio LLC, had been suing a lot of big corporations that have podcasts or that type of they're sharing this media, they're distributing this type of media in a particular way. So this company, Personal Audio LLC, has in fact sued companies like NBC, Fox, Apple, and then they sued Adam Carolla's company.
Because he's got one of the most popular podcasts going.
And so what we're saying about this company, to pull it out right away, is that these guys, I consider them to be called a patent troll. We've talked about patent trolls before. I'm going to give you a quick definition on that. So a patent troll can be thought of a company that either buys a bunch of patents or they apply for patents specifically to sue other companies.
Right.
And so their whole company's basis is to gain money through lawsuits, which I think is beyond despicable. So now let's dig into Personal Audio LLC a little bit. So this company started with their filing of patents on October 2nd in 1996. Take a look. I'll read like the one sentence description of these patents. An audio program and message distribution system in which a host system organizes and transmits program segments to client subscriber locations. That's one of their patents. Another one, an audio program and message distribution system in which a host system organizes and transmits program segments to client subscriber locations. Let that sink in for a second. They're essentially saying, you can't distribute media. You can't do that. That we own that idea. And the whole idea, of a company owning these basic ideas, really,
it's ridiculous.
The core of this whole item, which we'll get into the details more about Personal Audio, but as we describe this to you, think about just the idea of companies owning things that in my opinion should not be patentable. You should not be able to say nobody else but us can do it unless you pay for it.
You're not supposed to be able to patent an idea that's obvious.
Yeah.
And I think that they need to more generously interpret what that means. Distributing media on an intermittent basis. Really, that's a patentable idea? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's absurd. This is one of the worst patent trolls I've ever heard about. John Oliver did a great show. We talked about John Oliver
Yeah.
before. Just his patent.
No,
troll
I didn't see
segment.
it.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
It's
and
incredible.
He gives a lot of really ridiculous examples. Like some company got sued because they were Xeroxing something and then faxing it from their office, and
So that's
somebody
a
had the
violation.
patent on doing that. I mean, it was like ridiculous.
Oh, come on.
Oh
It
yeah.
was ridiculous.
Didn't
Yeah, but
James,
who was-
James
but-
Randi once brought up? He said somebody patented not the peanut butter sandwich itself, but the making of the peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah.
The process of making the peanut butter sandwich.
Sandwich.
That's some yes, a sandwich.
Mark Cuban from Shark Tank. There was one episode.
We were talking
I like
about
Mark Cuban. He's pretty cool. Pretty skeptical dude. He this guy came on and he had clothing that had wiring in it.
Yeah.
Okay. So they always ask, do you have any patents? Because patents have.
That's it.
Yeah, they're huge in that game. The ownership of the intellectual property can make or break a company.
Right, so no one could swoop in and take away your idea and
Right.
totally dilute
Yeah.
your contribution.
But I'll never forget, this guy's on, he's pitching his business. He's like, yeah, and I've patented, wiring something from this part to the, and Mark Cuban laid into this guy. He's like, it's guys like you that are stopping innovation and keeping other companies from coming up with good technology. And he really got pissed. I'm telling you, this guy's whole thing went from wow, it's pretty cool. He's got this cool multi-device vest thing. And after Mark said that, I'm like, that guy's an asshole. He turned me
He's
around.
trying to
180
patent the
degrees.
idea of putting a wire through a shirt.
Yeah. Get out of here. Okay, so you sew a wire into a shirt, and now you're the only person that can do that?
What's even worse is that patent trolls sometimes try to patent the use of a technology that doesn't even exist yet, right? And then once 5 years down the road, 6 years down the road, it's a thing that's about to be, somebody's about to engineer the thing. And they say, okay, good. When they get to that point, I'm going to patent the idea of using that to do this thing over here.
Yeah.
And then just so they could sue everybody then who tries to use that technology in that specific way. Again, it's
Abusing the system.
patents are the whole idea behind patents is that they're supposed to protect creativity so that it spawns innovation, right? It's supposed to promote, and I know that that's controversial, and there are people who think that there should be no patents, but whatever. If you accept the basic idea of patents, the whole point is to protect intellectual property to encourage innovation. But patent trolling does the opposite. It discourages innovation. These people aren't even really producing anything. They're just scavenging for ideas that no one's patented yet, and then trying to squat on it so that anybody who uses this obvious idea has to pay them money.
Try to sue them. Yeah.
And then not only that, it's defending a patent suit can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
You won't get anywhere with your
it's
product.
It's cost effective to just pay the thing, just pay the $50,000 or whatever. So it's blackmail. It's just
how the mafia
It's
works.
corporate blackmail.
It's corporate
I mean,
blackmail.
I was thinking when I was reading, reading all of this stuff to get ready to talk about this again, and I'm getting angry all over again.
It does make you angry. It's like, this
I
is
was thinking,
broken. It's so broken.
It's like
Please
this.
fix it.
So, 150 years ago, this person creates a farm.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to plant all my crops in a row. Right. Now
idea
I
of
am the
planting in a
only
row.
person that can do
plant
that farm.
crops
Just
in
think
a
about what that patent would have stopped.
Yeah.
If that was okay back then, or if people were literally going to let that happen, I think it's ridiculous. Now, but to think of it in a different way, now let's say that a company does develop, like one of the smartphone companies develops, like when you touch and swipe or do something on your smartphone,
Right.
not the swipe, but just like the electrical connection that's being made or not made when you do that.
Or the biofeedback thing that's in there.
Yeah, like whatever the mechanism to make it so the phone knows you're touching it. I get that. There might be we spent $300 million to figuring out how to do this specifically so it works, and then you don't want just another company to go, oh, now I'm going to use that.
They
and sell
reverse
your-"
engineer it, and then they
I
profit.
get that, and at that point there should be some type of licensing fee or whatever, but. It can be abused so easily, and as an example, check this out. So this is going to boil your blood. So this company sued in 2009. Personal Audio sued Apple for $84 million in damages for doing exactly what for this patent infringement. Right? They won $8 million. They won $8 million and then sued Apple again because there was other devices that Apple had that they didn't sue about in the first lawsuit. So they doubled down on their lawsuit and kept going.
What was the specific patent in this case?
Well, there's one patent in particular. It's 8112504. That's the real patent that they're making money on and that they're really going for. So in 2013, now let's get to the Adam Carolla bit. Personal Audio filed a patent infringement lawsuit against Lotse Digital Inc., And this company produces the Adam Carolla Show and the other podcasts on the Carolla Digital Network. The lawsuit stated that Carolla and his company infringed on one of the personal audio's patents, 8112504. Adam refused to settle.
Yep.
And you guys remember when this was going on.
Sure.
Like he got so livid, he became an expert on this stuff, fully educated himself. He's a smart guy, by the way. And very, very funny dude. So he raised $475,000 US through crowdfunding, which I think is awesome because his audience helped him pay for this. His listeners totally backed him. So on July 29th, 2014, Personal Audio dropped the lawsuit stating that the defendants, were not making significant money from infringing on Personal Audio's patents. So they basically said, now this could be their bullshit cover for dropping it, but they basically said, you know what?
Not worth
Never
it.
mind, it's not worth it. After $475,000 worth of a lawsuit took place. So Adam was so pissed that he countersued. He asked in the lawsuit, one of the things that he asked for in his lawsuit was that that Personal Audio's patents be completely invalidated. And that was awesome.
Yes.
It was ballsy and it was really awesome. So the whole mess ended in August 15th, 2014, when Carolla and Personal Audio settled out of court, which I think sometimes it's fine for a lawsuit.
That was his suit against them.
Yeah. I think it's fine if lawsuits get settled out of court. There's a lot of circumstance. Steve and I have learned a lot about this over the past year for our personal experiences, but there's lots of reasons why these things happen. But the good news, because of Adam's lawsuit, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, you guys know who the Electronic Frontier...
Give it the quickie.
So they're a leading nonprofit organization defending civil liberties in the digital world. They were founded in 1990, and EFF champions user privacy, free expression, and innovation through impact litigation, policy analysis, and grassroots activism. This is an awesome organization. They do an enormous amount of good. Go to their website and just read up on the different things that they're doing, and they have quite a dossier of things that they've achieved and everything. And it's really all it's a nonprofit. This is not being done for any other reason other than to be the good guys. So on April 10th, 2014, the Electronic Frontier Foundation petitioned for a review of Personal Audio's main patents. They raised $76,000 to do this through crowdfunding again. And in the petition, they said that Personal Audio should never have been given ownership rights to a way to create an updatable electronic table of contents. That's really at the core of their patent. That's what they were saying. The EFF challenged the patent on the basis of two of the following arguments. Here we go. The suggested technique would have been obvious to other developers, like Steve said, at the time, meaning it should not have been protected. The evidence given for this was that CNN had described a web-based video library of its own in 1995. So CNN publicly described technology that Personal Audio patented later on. So CNN actually originated, because they didn't have their patent, but they had the original idea, and you could trace it back to them.
The troll didn't even have their own idea. They went and borrowed CNN's idea from years prior.
Or it was so
Does that
obvious
matter?
That many people came up with it.
Yeah, it was just like, even if they didn't get it directly from CNN, the point is this idea was out there. It was obvious. It's not something that should ever have been patentable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the other point they brought up was the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation published a paper in '96 detailing its trial of a system that allowed people to download radio shows from the web following their broadcast.
There you go.
This meant the technique had already been anticipated, like Steve said, in a printed publication before the patent was filed, meaning related rights should never have been granted. So they effectively proved that the patent was completely bullshit because other companies had already come up with this stuff. So, guys, after reviewing the patents, the U.S. Patent Office invalidated critical parts of the patent that was given to Personal Audio. Adam Carolla's settlement was for $0, by the way. He didn't pay anything. So, the good news is, in this particular situation against Personal Audio, the good guys won. They got the patents invalidated, and Personal Audio officially is something that podcasters don't have to worry about anymore.
But the bad news is that it's still too easy to patent obvious ideas. What's being done about that? Why did that happen?
Doesn't solve that problem.
And what can we do about that? That's the crux
I'll
of it.
tell you, that's exactly.
Yeah.
We need patent reform. Here's the problem: just like the fact that there's millions of lawsuits going on, and the courts are behind schedule by years because there's too many lawsuits going on. There's too many patents being filed. and there's not enough intelligent people to sit down, not enough
They're
physical.
just getting rubber stamped.
Yeah, there's not enough man hours to actually go through this stuff. This is why, this is going to sound crazy, but I think we need artificial intelligence to go in and really examine all this stuff and figure out what's what. But, it's just one of those things. As more and more companies, humanity grows, more and more companies exist, more and more patents are happening, technology is snowballing, like how do you keep up with it? Big companies like Apple and Samsung are suing each other left and right over technologies that you stole this, no, you stole that, and it's like constant litigation going on with all these corporations. Very interesting read, though, guys.
It is, yeah. All right, we're going to get to you now, Evan, and we're going to do our first hardcore pseudoscience. Well, I did one with the medical one, but this is a little bit different. Go ahead.
So your birthday can say a lot about what happens in your home. Did you know that? On the date you were born, depending on where you live, that has an effect because astrology follows you wherever you go into whatever dwelling you decide to inhabit at any given time. So this is an article from the Huffington Post from a little while back. The HuffPo. Under their, let's see, it's called the Positive Change section of the Huffington Post. Now, forgive me for being kind of old school about newspapers and these sorts of things. Remember when you'd open your newspaper, you'd have the front section, you'd have the business section, the sports section, and the whatever else section.
Yeah. But there was always a living or whatever.
Entertainment.
There's always a fluff section.
I grant you that this
it's just a rebranding of the fluff section.
This creeps me out a little because there's something subliminal about it.
It is the bullshit section.
The bullshit section.
Bullshit and snake oil.
And what they're telling you is that your home has a horoscope. That depends on you. Yep. The day you were born tells you a lot about how the planets affect everything that happens inside your house. The way you decorate, the activities you perform in each room are influenced by the gravitational pulls of the planets and where the planets are in relationship to each other and in which star sign they're against in the background.
Did they specifically mention gravity?
Yeah, they kind of missed that one about gravity.
Did they mention gravity?
Did they mention gravity? I don't believe so.
Okay, no. Because sometimes they give you all kinds of different bullshit explanations. So I was wondering, do they specifically go for gravity? Because now, of course, it's all quantum. I mean, everything's connected. Right. I mean,
that's right. Because when you were born, you see, you have these invisible planet lines. They're called, and they are around you, and they are around your house. To find them,
you have to know about this house.
You have, but you can't just know that they're there. You need a chart. You need to go and obtain a local space chart, which is based on the location of the sun, moon, and planets at the time and place of your birth. And then what you do is you lay the chart over the plot of your house, the floor plan of your house, and you'll find out where the lines all line up. And this is your astrology for your home. For example, you have a moon line that intersects, say, with your home office. The moon is associated with emotions and family, so you might decorate your office with family photos to better channel the moon energy in the room.
The moon energy.
There is moon energy, Bob.
Oh, well, yeah, sure.
But I'm confused. So
photons.
Are they saying
tidal
that
forces.
It explains itself.
The year that you built the house, it has like a birthday, and that's
the year you were born.
Your birthday gets
Gets
imprinted upon your house.
Wait a second. The obvious question number one, I live in my house with my wife and my son.
Yeah.
What if you have 3 or 4 people living in a house that are all born at different times of the year?
Yeah, so they do talk about that a little bit. And basically what it comes down to is whichever rooms you kind of occupy more times than others. In other words, say, I don't know if you want to get old-fashioned about it, say your wife is in the kitchen more than you are. Then the lines of your wife influence how the kitchen should be laid out. If you were smoking your pipe with your jacket in the den and you're there most of that time, then your den follows your line.
But then what? So what? So my room then is going to have because I was born in August, a Leo sense about it, and what is that? How does that affect people?
Yeah, no, however Leo affects. I mean, however the signs and the stars in Leo do affect you.
Okay.
Colors also apparently matter. Let's say maybe your Mars line runs through your family living room. And since Mars is a planet of combative energy and courage, it makes sense for you to do exercise videos inside of your living room, as opposed to other rooms.
It's still, I know this is ridiculous to say, but it's unbelievable to me still that there are human beings who could take any of this seriously. They're
Adults.
Yeah.
They're not children.
Adults, right?
These
There
are
are
adults.
like non-mentally challenged adults who seriously believe this stuff.
Well, when you say adult, are you talking? When you say adults, you're saying people who are
chronologically.
Yeah. They've lived a certain number of years, but there has to be a massive level of immaturity to like.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the inventor of this idea, but it's the people that they sell it to. Like they're paying money for hoo-ha like this. But this is Ev, this is one of the more ridiculous things I've heard of.
It definitely is. I wouldn't be surprised if they also have these sorts of things for when you go and purchase your car.
Yeah.
If there are certain astrological charts you're supposed to be consulting and the type and maybe make of car that you're going to be buying, how that lines up.
I have a question.
If I have a house, a car, why not? There's no difference.
What sign is the planet? Planet must have a sign.
It depends where the planet is in position to the constellation and on the date.
But if you built your home on Mars,
now we're getting.
Could you have Mars in your whatever?
You would have Earth in one of the constellations.
Earth horoscope.
Because right now, you don't have that.
All right,
So,
well,
ridiculous.
We are, what time is it? We're 20 minutes away from our next interview with Julia Galef. She's coming up at 4 o'clock. So we have enough time, I think, to do our first movie review. We kind of sort of did one with Eyes Wide Shut, but that was a quickie.
Yeah.
So Evan, we're going to start with your choice for a movie. Now, people were commenting on our Twitter feed about the spoilers, but we're doing movies that I don't think we need to worry about.
That's right.
So you're going to start with what?
Age of Ultron. No. Here's how it ends. The original Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
Fine movie in my estimation.
Chuck Heston.
This was, for me personally, a movie in which I did see on television as a boy growing up. I was probably about 8 years old or so. So I really didn't understand all the sort of finer concepts of it all. It was just kind of cool that there were these astronauts and they went to this place where, these apes acting like humans were walking around and like, and there's conflict, and things like that. So very kind of superficial level. I found it entertaining on that level. But as you got older and you watch this movie more, you realize it's talking about some very actually, I think, important things about exactly who we are, our place. Evolution certainly is a big part of this topic, and perspective. It's a lot about perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, do you want to talk about the science at all first, or can we go? We can stick to this theme and then come back to the science in a bit. So I agree. That's what I find really compelling. Even when I was younger, like we saw this as, obviously my memory now is completely unreliable and distorted. But even my oldest memories of watching this movie and thinking about this movie, I think one thing that really resonated with me was that, it's one of the first times I can remember where the whole idea of a different culture's view on reality could be completely different than what we see. It's like to them, the apes were the more evolved, and humans were beasts.
Right, creatures.
Simian spark, there's some reference to that.
Yeah. What is the proof that there's a divine spark in the simian brain?
Yes.
Right? That was their culture. That was their ideology, and everything was flipped. But that was what was so cool. It was like, people. A culture can get completely bizarre, different ideas, and to them, that's their reality. That's what everyone knows and what they take for granted. And of course, you're invited to consider that about your own culture. It's like, well, a lot of the stuff we think is just bullshit that we made up and we take for granted now.
I mean, I'm assuming our audience understands what Planet of the Apes is. Do I have to go ahead and sort of describe the plot a little bit?
Give the 10-second blurb.
Astronauts from the planet Earth in the not so distant future are taking
it's actually now in our past.
Well, now in our past when you think about it, because the movie came out in 1960.
In the near future of when the movie came out,
right?
Right, and they took a journey. These were the first explorers into space, going to try to find another world in which to inhabit and learn about and so forth. So they were going to this hibernation. Obviously, they come crashing down onto this planet. Only 3 of them survive.
The woman didn't, unfortunately.
The woman did not. No,
that was a pretty cool
which
visual,
was kind of
when they the the ship crashes in the ocean or something, this other planet's ocean,
or a giant lake,
and then they're trying to get out, and she's like in her like suspension area tube or whatever, right? And she just was like this desiccated skeleton.
That's
died
right.
100 years ago.
Yeah.
But by the way, if you're sending 4 people to a planet to populate it with humans,
Not
you
quite
don't send
enough.
3 guys and 1 girl. You
No,
send
he's
3
3 women.
girls and 1 guy.
That's
You can't
right.
repopulate. You can't
They
populate
got the
a planet
ratio
with 4
kind of
people
wrong
anyway.
there.
Hey, actually,
Whoa.
there is if you have 1 guy and 2 women,
That's it?
you have a 50% chance of establishing a self-sustaining population.
I thought it was
That's all?
20,000 people.
I thought it was 2,000.
2,000
Bullshit. I know, bullshit.
2,000 is a self-sustaining population, but you can get to that point. First of all, that has to be true, Bob, because think about it. In evolution, you go through these bottlenecks, especially whenever you have a chromosome change. Let's say, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like between chimps and humans. You don't have 2,000 individuals with the chromosome flip immediately. It's got to be a very tiny population at first. So in any case, it's possible for 3 people to eventually establish a sustaining population. It partly would depend on like how outbred they are to begin with. If they're already very similar, very inbred, it'll be harder.
Right, and remember, a long time ago, before humans even existed, the genetic diversity was much greater than what we humans have right now because of that bottleneck in our past, right?
We've had several bottlenecks.
Right, so we're not genetically diverse at all compared to more recent evolutionary history. But Steve, I mean, you've got 1 guy and 2 women. I mean, these are like their offspring. How could they possibly reproduce?
Yeah, no, they could. It's actually
You have to have a lot of offspring.
They're half brother and sister.
It's not as bad as you think. In fact, first cousins is
right.
is actually
First cousins are right.
Statistically, I mean, your risk of obviously
is greater,
recessive diseases is greater,
but it's not horrific. It's not like what the fuck are you doing?
It's not a deal.
It's not the end of the planet.
Changer. Yeah. In fact, I read an article not too long ago that it said there's actually could be some evolutionary advantage to first cousin matings because you not only do you perpetuate any bad genes, but you also preserve any advantages that your lineage has.
True. Yeah.
But in any case, so we're getting off topic here. But yes, one male, 2 females could theoretically develop a self-sustaining population. But the other rule of thumb is that if you dip below 2,000, your risk of extinction goes way up. 2,000 is a comfortable self-sustaining population.
Okay.
So it's not. I said 50% chance, meaning that half the time they're not going to get
work.
that. Anyway,
Right.
that's an estimate, obviously. But so you could theoretically, with 1 guy and if you had 2 guys and 2 women, or 1 guy and 3 women, whatever. That could eventually lead to a self-sustaining population, especially if they were very genetically diverse going in.
Yes.
Numbers seem extraordinarily low, but okay.
They've traveled all this distance, and they've traveled about 2,000 years into the future from their time.
I don't know if we ever get a time.
Yeah, there was a chronometer in the ship itself, and they showed it at one point, which I can't remember.
I liked the fact that they actually tried to show some kind of relativistic, effects going on.
Was it relativistic or was it just hibernation? Right, they're in hibernation. So were they in hibernation for 1,000 years?
We're talking about 2 different things. So one was it time dilation?
Time dilation,
right?
So yeah, I think there definitely was time dilation.
Yeah,
even 2,000.
I assume that as well.
Distance. Animation. Maybe they were out for a few years, but it was time dilation
because their beards,
Right,
beards didn't grow to be these enormous beards. They had
clearly
kind of
biologically
beards,
they were slowed down.
Yeah.
No, but you could travel into the future in 2 ways.
When Charlton Heston is on the bridge and he's awake, you're seeing the stars flying by, and they were shifted and everything.
That's just a sci-fi trope.
I know, but it was.
That's not relativistic. That's superluminal too. That's very different.
Well, we got into this discussion. What would it look like though if there was a significant amount of time dilation going on? What would it look like to you on the bridge of the ship?
It wouldn't be star. I mean, it would. You'd have the.
the tunneling effect with the colors.
You have a red shift, blue shift. I mean,
it wouldn't look like
it wouldn't look as cool as.
But the stars were all distorted and stuff. I don't know why they did that. If they were thinking
it was a cool effect. It was a cool effect.
It was a cool effect.
But I think we have to say there was some time dilation going on.
They come crashing. You got these 3
that's my
human males now who've crashed now onto this what appears to be barren and deserted really planet.
Class M planet.
Yeah, class with 1G. Always 1G.
1G.
Never kind of worked out the whole gravity thing with movies yet. They'll get to that eventually. Okay, so they've got, they realize, all right, well, here we are now. We've got no woman. We're not going to be able to perpetuate the human race. So we just got to really kind of make the best of it and figure out as much as we can about exactly what's going on and where exactly we are. Okay. So with a little bit of exploring and walking around, they come across finally some lush vegetation and actual water and stuff. Okay, a little place where you can survive. Lo and behold, there are these humans, or proto-humans, or something that resembles a human. They look like humans.
But they couldn't talk.
They could not talk. And they have very sort of primitive sorts
brutish
of behaviors and actions. What you would say is a classic sort of caveman, maybe.
Doesn't Heston say at that point, yeah, we could take over this?
Yeah, in 6 months we'll be running this whole planet. Until lo and behold, riding in on horseback, wielding guns and firing at them and hunting down those humans are the apes.
Yeah,
of course, the superior
humanoid
species,
apes,
humanoid apes on the planet. They capture the
humanoid apes.
They're farming the humans.
Right?
Yeah, well, they're capturing them so they don't continue to ruin their crops and these sorts of other things. They're containing them, throwing them into jail, doing scientific experiments on them, and all these horrible things. Well, only one of them winds up really surviving, if you can call it surviving, in the end, and that's the Charlton Heston character, who can't talk for the first half of the movie because he took a bullet to the throat.
Ouch.
Until that heals up, and then he finds out, oh my God, a human that can talk. Get your damn man, get your
stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape. Iconic line from that movie.
So what the apes thought they had, we just captured kind of another human who was maybe like a little bit different than the others. Whoa, this one can talk. And that sets the whole civilization into chaos.
That's
because
they
tried it, and
the elites, like
the elites
Zayas,
want to get rid of this guy.
Know what the answer is.
They know what's really going on.
Now, remember, the assumption for most of the movie is that this is an alien planet, many light years from Earth. Of course, you've got apes and human-looking people, which
should have been the first clue.
That's the first clue right there.
1G should have been a clue.
They're all
as well.
speaking English.
Not even 1G. As soon as you see a human, like, oh, I'm on Earth.
Yeah, the apes are speaking English.
Yeah.
Or another planet colonized by humans.
So the other thing is,
And it was also odd. Some of the apes had a British accent, which was a little weird.
Some did. I say.
That's not my.
Was it ever explained why did the ship return to Earth?
In the second?
No, we don't know.
Why not? Why?
We don't know.
Because they were going to another planet.
Why did they crash land on their planet? No, they don't. They don't explain that. The
ship returned home.
Was there a throwaway line, maybe?
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, all right, so to finish the plot story, though, just to quickly get through the end of the film, two of the scientists befriend Taylor, who is the lead astronaut.
Right, basically the social scientist.
And he explains to them, where he's from and the whole deal. And then we later come to find out that, as you were saying, Steve, one or maybe more, but we know that one of the leader apes, who is actually an orangutan, he knows all about
Dr.
the fact
Zayas,
that the apes were actually these advanced apes, and all of them were created by humans in their past, and humans are now gone, or that human society is long gone,
and that they destroyed the Earth.
Yeah, and they destroyed their own planet. And then, go ahead, Ab.
The ape society is sort of this conglomeration of a little bit of technology, a little bit of science, and a lot of religion.
Yeah,
and that's the overarching government that basically governs the apes. So they refer to the sacred scrolls, the Bible, essentially, and that's how they derive things like their justice system, and I'm sure some of their economy and some other things are derived out of that. So they refer to what the sacred scrolls say. The sacred scrolls say that this could not possibly happen. Therefore, you cannot have a talking human. It is not possible.
Yeah, go to the image on the computer. So I like this was a funny scene where the tribunal, the three judges. One
covers his eyes.
Yeah, one covers his eyes, one covers his mouth, one covers his ears.
Right.
Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil.
Right, the classic.
So,
that was
it's
awesome.
funny because obviously we know what the cultural derivation is. They obviously don't, but to them it's the sacred thing, which is another revelation. As a young person watching this movie, which is also why I love
the
science
trial
fiction
scene was
in general.
wonderful. My favorite scene of the movie was the trial scene.
Yeah, it was awesome. It's like science fiction at its best. Science fiction is a commentary on society and as a window into, it pulls you out of your narrow view of reality and your society and the world and shows you it from a different angle. And you're like, yeah, these people, are ignorant to their own cultural heritage, and to them everything is legendary and sacred and holy and all that. But it's really just bullshit in the past. That of course we know that that's the case. And yeah, the trial, was wonderful. I love it when it's like flying machine. That's impossible. And he throws the paper airplane,
something that floats on the air. Oops.
And then he's like, "That's sacrilege," or whatever.
Right,
really?
Oh God! Yeah, like Galileo, just reporting what he's observing in the telescope. Like, no, this is like reality.
So the human astronauts condemned to death, but with the help of the two ape friends, the scientists,
scientists are the heroes.
Roddy McDowell, love them.
They escaped back to the Forbidden Zone where they crash landed, so that they can actually show them where they were. And one of the apes who helped them escape was like an archaeologist who discovered a cave many years prior and saw some artifacts in there. And that's where
from 20th century,
from the 20th, from the modern 20th century, in which basically it puts together the pieces of the puzzle for you that there was a culture there based on humans that had advanced technology.
Yeah.
And humans can do all these things that these apes can do, and more.
The deeper you dig, the higher the level of technology, which is counterintuitive. But that's exactly what he discovered.
And sure enough, spoiler alert, the end scene is, of course, when
they blow up the cave. They blow up the cave.
The apes blow up the cave to hide the evidence. Charlton Heston's character, along with his human girl Nova, go riding off on horseback to get away from the ape civilization. They're going to try to just carve out their own life for themselves, but in doing so, they realize they've come across what is the ruins of the Statue of Liberty, and that's when
he realizes,
God damn you!
Blew it up.
Perfect ending.
Blew it up. Because obviously what had happened in that reveal, you realize, okay, the humans did. They had a catastrophe with their weapons, nuclear weapons or whatever. Their civilization was basically wiped out, or very few people of the species survived, but never got back to where they were. Yeah. And what took their place were the apes.
The uplifted apes.
He was home all the time.
They were
never
uplifted.
Right.
So
that's the movie.
I think this movie,
Sorry, baby.
From a science perspective, some things you had to give them a few things, like the ship and it coming back, and but it is plausible that a ship could go out and with time dilation go into the future, which is good. I found the acting in this movie, even since I was a kid, I always thought it was superb. Mm-hmm. I think Charlton Heston,
nailed it.
Yeah, but he was in his element of overacting.
Yeah, sure.
But it's
convincing.
iconic.
That original Planet of the Apes blew away, in my opinion, the remake. Did not like the remake.
Which remake? We have a couple
Burton
different
remake?
remakes. We have the Tim Burton remake.
I didn't like.
Which I did not like.
That was a disappointment.
I like the recent ones, though.
Yes.
The recent one, which has nothing, zero to do with the old one.
It's the backstory
totally
of what happened on Earth.
Right.
Yeah, it's
right.
Well, yeah.
I hope they get to this part.
Yes,
that would be great.
I'm enjoying the recent remakes. I'm sorry, I was referencing the original remake, which I thought was a terrible.
Was a disaster.
Yeah, I kind of blew it.
Yeah, and I think the latest ones where they're doing the history of what happened, I think they're getting better as they go. The most recent one in particular was fantastic.
And the special effects is a tour de force. Motion capture, the graphics was incredible.
Yep.
Something you may not, or maybe now you do realize about the original Planet of the Apes is that it was co-produced by Rod Serling.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow!
Twilight Zone,
awesome.
Which and I'd only realized that much later, after having seen it many times, and then you look back and it's like, yes, of course, this is a very great Twilight Zone.
Yes, right. Extended Twilight Zone.
Of course, Rod Serling was involved with this.
All right. We have our next interview coming up.
Cool.
So don your earbuds. We're going to bring in Julia
to the
Galef.
earbuds, gentlemen.
And we're going to have to gather around. Children.
Okay.
All right, bud. You're going to get cozy with your brother.
Oh, boy. Looking forward to it.
Keep going.
Hi, Julia.
Guys.
Hey. How are you?
Julia, you are live and on camera.
Yes, you are. You are on camera. You are being streamed right now.
Happy 10-year anniversary.
Thank you so
much.
Julia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I made you guys something.
You did?
I made you a present. I looked up online what the gift was for a 10-year anniversary, and it was tin or aluminum. Did you know that?
No.
Okay. I knew it, but I forgot it.
So, it's not my best work, but I made you this tinfoil hat.
Oh,
awesome.
to celebrate and also to protect my brain from alien spying.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Excellent.
Fashionable and practical. That's great.
Thank you. I'll send it to you after the show is over.
You could, feel free to send that to Bob.
Yeah.
He needs it most, right?
Yeah.
Autographed, of course.
Promise me that you'll wear that for this entire interview, though.
Why would I not? I mean, look at it.
Yeah, come on. What a fashion statement.
I've been looking forward to showing this off for ages. How is the marathon going?
It feels like we're just getting started.
I know, really.
We're 1 hour away from being
went through
halfway
our first set of
Yeah.
news.
No way, really?
Yeah.
With the
It's
clock
4
on the
o'clock
back,
our time.
we have
and
6
we
hours
started
left. We have 4 hours down, 6 to go.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it's
Do
rolling.
we
Tell you,
look
we should
tired
have done
yet?
24 hours again. I could have.
Julia, do we look tired?
You no.
We are.
I see some circles under your eyes, but I assumed those were wisdom circles, not fatigue circles.
Yeah, they're always
That's the way to
there.
put it.
So yeah.
So, Julia, you are a fellow skeptical podcaster, rationally speaking. How many years are you into with your podcast now?
It's almost exactly 5 years.
Wow.
We just celebrated our 5-year anniversary at Nexus.
Cool.
So we are exactly half as old as you, which is kind of cool.
Well, this year, anyway.
Yeah, this year.
How many episodes?
That's it, yeah.
134.
Oh, you're babies.
I remember those
So we
days.
do it bi-weekly, and we.